Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
They go down. There's a ground ball. 7. First down. Mancini drops the ball. Contreras will score. Sloppy defense by the Cubs. Cardinals are on the board. It's 4-1 Cubs.
Now the pitch. Freeman swings, line drive, right center field. Tucker going back, reaches up over his head, all the way to the wall. Around third here is Betts cruising into second base. And a 2-out double, and Freddie Freeman, career hit number 2,000, comes on a double to right center.
With the bases loaded, the pitch in the dirt, goes for the legs of Perez. Here comes Siri, no throw home. Rays lead 2-1 on a wild pitch by Taylor Clark, and the other runners advance to second and third.
Here's the 0-1 to Beloso.
Hit high and deep to right field. Giving it a look is Scheichhofer, and this baby's gone! Gabe Beloso gives the Tigers a 4-3 lead.
Prior to that, he struck me out on 3 straight heaters. I figured he was going to go back to that. It was not pretty. And then the first pitch blew by me again, so I knew he was coming back over there. They weren't going to switch anything up. And finally got one that I was supposed to swing out and put a good swing on it.
Breaking ball to start, and Evans skies this one down the line and left toward the corner. Pearson back at the wall. That ball is gone! It's a grand slam for Evans!
Hey, good morning, DB. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. See, the voice is a little hoarse.
Yeah, mine is terrible.
I feel like everybody on this platform has a hoarse voice. Shane was telling me when we walked in, hey, don't have me ask questions today. I feel a little tickle in the throat.
A little bit.
We had, 7-on-7 Friday and Saturday, which is the first time. So 2 things. Note to self. I can't even hear myself. This is kind of.
I know. I turned mine up too.
So, do you like my nice little armrest I have right here? So the cool thing is,
I was wondering why you moved that over.
I don't know. I just felt like I felt like I was at the house, and I should probably just have a place to chill. So
kick your feet up.
So there's 2 things, and I think people that have coached for a long time will tell you there's 2 things that you need spring. You need off-season training for. Number 1 is to walk the sidelines. If you haven't done it for a while and then you're back out there, you gotta get into walking, standing form. I mean, us old guys need good shoes. Can't
lower back starts to hurt.
First day you're out there,
around.
man, lower back's gonna be shot, and you have to train your voice. Right? I mean, Schaefer was kind of being serious on Thursday when he was like, "Yeah, the first thing I heard DB say was get rid of it now," and I was probably 20 feet away. And unlike a lot of other people that were there doing 7-on-7, you've watched me coach. I'm not a yeller to be yelling. I'm usually either saying, hey, listen, head on a swivel, 6 inches,
right,
face 2,
you're
stuff
like
a
yeller for direction.
Yeah, it's not.
You don't just lay into kids to lay into them. You give them an objective as you are yelling at them. But majority of the time when you're so-called yelling in a game, it's because the crowd is so loud that you have to yell to be loud enough.
And it was it was well attended, right? So that was something. Micah played over the weekend, and he was in KC, and I was coming back and forth from Omaha to KC, which I don't recommend doing. If you're going, stay. Whatever, but it was just chill. I haven't had what I would call a hot meal in probably 4 days.
Yeah, that would probably be me too, but that's because I have people in there.
So we're different, but I may have been you at 26. I can't imagine. You're going on listen, this is crazy.
It is crazy.
You're going on 2 weeks of people in and out of your house and entertaining.
Yeah. Thank God for Ashley. She's been a huge help. For the in-house stuff.
I mean, I was supposed to probably have liked my ex-wife when I was 26, but we weren't married yet. But she ain't putting up with that either. I don't under. This is.
And it's all dudes. Like there's no ladies coming over.
Yeah, that's just too much.
Hey, there were 4 guys opening weekend.
Now, as long as one of them
now.
was your brother, that, like I'm,
Mhm.
that would be chill. But because I'm a little biased, like I think I would like him, right? Like, cool,
Right.
But everybody else so far, these stories you've been telling me the last 10 days, I just don't know, man. Like you may be in a gots to go situation. But so a couple of things this weekend. And feel free to, you want the endorsement, hit me up, 402-699.
Yeah, I was going to say you given the last 4.
I do have a nice, well, I have like what I would call I have 2 real lawyers, and then I have like Sasha, who's kind of doubling as
the attorney that's appointed to you because you can't afford an attorney.
She's like negotiating my numbers. She said, I feel like your agent. Hey, how was the vineyard? Which, by the way, I spoke out at a vineyard on Friday in Raymond, Nebraska. Those people were so cool. It was unbelievable. Now, I couldn't get sales service, so I may put in my clause, hey, I'll love to speak to you. But, because, I mean, I was only supposed to be 25 minutes. Man, they kept me for like, I bet it was at least an hour. And it was only like 30 people, but they just, they had some hard questions and stuff. And so that was cool. But I think I may put in my disclaimer, if I'm going somewhere and you want me to do something and I'm going to potentially lose cell service, I'm not coming. I'm not coming. They had you on a gravel road for like a mile and a half.
It's just not for you?
Like I got range, like I'm not, it was cool. But once I got there, it's a nice little, they had a smoker, like nothing was on it, but you could tell it's a vineyard, right? It's a place that can host events. And they had a smoker out there. I wanted to say, hey, listen,
fire that bad boy up.
Instead of like, because I know they want me to come back. There's a big deal that they want to have in Kearney. They're like, man, that was unbelievable, and this, that, and the other. And I got this deal in Kearney on November 1st, and I was like, swap me the smoker. We'll trade for budgeted items.
Could you put that in the back of your car?
Man, listen,
or would you have to?
I got enough buddies with trucks.
So it's that big.
Yeah. It's a double, and it has the big chimney stack, and it was a beauty. I've been trying to get the one from Vers that he has out back that he does his pastrami on, but allegedly it's not his. But the real news of the week is I did something twice, and I went back. I did something twice that I have not done for myself since 2011. The year of the divorce the year the divorce went final. I ate at Subway.
You heard a little chuckle?
Yeah.
You heard the little chuckle?
I ate at Subway, and it was not a 6-inch bacon, egg, and cheese flatbread, which I've had probably once or twice in the last 11 years. I ate there twice in 30 hours.
And is that because you were on the road?
It was because Micah Daniel is a weirdo when it comes to eating on the road. He's very health conscientious. Mm-hmm. So he's not stopping to get Churches or Popeyes or any other good place. This dude loves Subway.
I don't hate Subway. I vibe with Subway.
It's cool, right? And he's like, Dad, I know what it is, but did you see the advertisement? Like for his birthday, he has a Subway card. He got a Subway gift card. Like he's that dude. He's like, Dad, coming soon, they're going to slice their own meats. You can't call them the House of Sweaty Meats anymore. Because that's what I used to say when I was younger. They peel the meat apart. I was like, right. This just sounds gross. Like,
yeah, they peel the cheese apart. They peel everything apart. At least they toast it.
But I'm telling you, and I'm not a toast guy. I may say it depends on what I'm dealing with.
Doesn't LK use Chef Mike?
LK is in Lil King?
Mm-hmm.
Lil King is fire.
Don't they use Chef Mike?
I don't know, but it's right by my house, and they're like
I had it
West
for the
Side
first
folks.
time. It was good, but Ashley said she came back and she's like, Andrew, they use Chef Mike there.
Chef Mike. Who's Chef Mike?
In the microwave.
Nah. Well, so does Subway to warm their sandwiches.
No, they use like they
have
use
both.
Like
they have
a
both.
Toaster.
They have both. They put it on the little thing. They slide it in, and they hit a few buttons. Oh,
yeah,
don't
you had
kid
to
yourself.
start the toaster.
No, don't kid yourself now.
That's a toaster.
No, bro. They put the bacon in the microwave.
What is that called? It's not an oven.
I know. I want one of those. I saw people. I saw people. I saw people on my TikTok do steaks on those things. Because they can get them super hot, like you get the good ones. But listen, here's the real deal.
The kicker. Go ahead.
So I had it twice, and it wasn't for breakfast. And I got I've never been there, but I see all the ads, right? So I was like, yeah, can I get a number 30? And this particular establishment in downtown Kansas City was not. The people weren't from. Well, maybe they were from here originally, but that's not their original descent as a culture.
Okay.
This dude looked at me. His eyebrow was so high as to this puzzle.
One eyebrow?
Look. He said, "We don't have a number 30. Does not go that high, sir." I said, I don't know. I said, you got a 99. I said, you got a 30.
We got race car numbers.
Because they're all those the sports stars
Right.
sandwiches, right? And
Right.
he said, "Oh, the beast." I'm not going to do his accent. He said, "Oh, the beast." And I was like, "Yeah, man, the beast."
You know what? I'm not really feeling like this story. Can you give me a little bit more?
So,
I can
like,
really get into it?
so it took like literally 6 minutes to get this hashed out. And then I changed from a 6 to a foot long because I looked at a 6 was
like $8.
$6. No, like $6.39. It was actually like $8.39, and the footlong was only like $13.99.
Mm-hmm.
So, like halfway through reading the thing, I was like, "Oh man, I want to get my bang for the buck." So I was like, "Hey, can I make that a footlong?" He was truly perplexed on what to do with the half a thing of flatbread that he cut in half. I said, "No, just use that. It doesn't have to be together."
Right, just make two of them.
Hey. The struggle was real.
Amen. Amen. So what you can do is open up both.
But it was pretty good. So today, I don't know what it is.
You're back on the subway train?
No, I'm cooking. I want something hot where I have to use a knife and a fork. Seriously, I don't know what it's gonna be, but
are you just gonna go to the grocery store and let it speak to you?
No, I mean I got so much in the freezer. Like I'll make it happen. I don't know if I may take out steaks or kebabs or something, but your boy needs something hot, and I can't stand eating in the car. It's just
I ate in the car at home, so let that mind twist.
At the house, you ate in the car?
No, I'm saying like food that you eat in the car, we ate at home.
Oh yeah, but you're not afraid to just get by sometimes.
No, and it's easier for me because I only have to feed two.
I got a family to feed.
A lot more than me. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And plus, there was never really a point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to take 2 hours while I'm hanging out with my boy to.
Do you know who I saw in said subway? 2 LSU fans.
Oh, well,
hey,
I'm shocked that you saw an LSU fan down there.
Listen, the cutest couple. I mean, they were probably my age. And you could tell, I mean, my man was baked. I don't mean like we were just talking about off air. I mean like baked from being in the sun.
He was lobstered?
Man, he had the raccoon eyes going, and she looked like she had just came off the beach, and she had like this curly hair and this like flash dance sweatshirt, right? You know, kind of off. I mean, they were just a cool, fun little couple.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah. Quick meal. Stomach's bad from watching 23 hits, but guess what? Maybe they left it all out there and they won't have any for tonight.
Maybe they're tired.
And we were at a Subway that was extremely far from Schwab, extremely far from the Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, we're X amount of miles away. Why are you here? Cheapest place that they could stay. Dead serious. Listen, it was
Bang for your buck.
Listen, it was over an hour away. And in my head, but I didn't want to strike up too much conversation. I was like, aren't you spending that in gas? But then I told you some of those prices that I was jacking around with on Bonvoy.
Yeah.
For what was being charged when the CWS first started. Oh, no, he's saving money.
That is indeed true.
Hey, my man was the color of this table. I mean, straight brown. I'm like, how long you guys been? I mean, they're just living it up. And LSU, he said, just mob deep. He said he's met 50 new friends. Can you imagine going someplace and meeting 50 new, what you'd call friends? But now he never knew these people, met them, and they hang out every day. Every day for the last 7 days. He said since the elimination game. Can you imagine seeing the same? I'm like, nope. Yeah, you guys are way better people than me. That's like you having people in your house for 2 weeks.
Hey, if they're your people though, like
I'm telling you, next year we're gonna do the B&B thing.
Because like if they lived here, it wouldn't be the same, right? Like so if you had a group of people that came in from that are like your.
I'm still tripping off how when I said the number 30, he looked at me like I had a horn. Well, isn't that what I'm supposed to call it though?
They probably just wanted to know the name of the sandwich versus the
beast.
Number.
The one with
maybe they don't correlate
the
one
with the
most
sandwich. Meats. And it was only 2 people working in there. So
right.
I mean, we're in downtown KC. We're off of Broadway Street. And it took 14 minutes. And we're the only it's me and a little kid. I mean, he's 13.
Mm-hmm. You talk about like just running into people cool as a cucumber. Saturday, when I was over at the Slowdown before the game, I ran into 2 people that I met last year down at the CWS. And speaking of cool, his last name's Cooley. So maybe
I know a Cooley.
If it fires in, can't be the same Cooley from Houston.
No, Jeff. He's a paint dent. He's a mobile detail guy.
So his name's Andrew and his dad, Ralph. They've been coming to the College World Series since 1997 when Rice played.
That's awesome.
So they were the first 2 people to give me an interview when Hurrdat Sports was starting up last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, they were cool to me. I'm going to be cool to them. Like we DM on Twitter every time they come down.
Oh, that's cute.
So they were like, yeah, we got tickets to game 1, but we don't have tickets to game 2 yet. And I had tickets to game 2, but I didn't know if I wanted to go because it was like 95 degrees on Saturday night. It was stale. Mm-hmm. There was no breeze. I was like, I can't imagine sitting out here 2:00 tomorrow. I didn't check the weather. I just assumed it was going to be like the rest of the week in the high 80s, low 90s. So I said, because, I could have easily, after LSU won that first game, and we didn't know that at the time, but I could have waited and probably sold those tickets for a lot more than I paid for them.
You know what's funny about that? You've been mapping this in your head we talked about this at Let It Fly 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like, so ideally, if I wanted to strike it, you're on the right. You're like, I got to be cheering for LSU the whole time. I was like, yeah. And you still caved?
So I sold them the tickets for the price I got them for.
That's cool.
Because they were good to me, I'm good to them.
Okay.
Like,
no, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
So instead of, because he was like, I'm on StubHub. I can't find a ticket less than $250 right now.
Yeah, folks were getting cracked.
Right now. And I said,
what are they going for tonight?
I checked yesterday, I believe, like in the 170s if you're in the bleachers, if you find a good seat.
Man, Omaha won with this event.
Yes, they did. And, it would not have gone down the way it did if LSU didn't get this far.
Yeah.
And that's why I said from the very beginning, I need LSU to go the distance.
So quietly, are you one of those guys that and I told the guy this at Subway yesterday. I said, there's this part of me. So there's this duality, right? I want to be right. And I've been saying Florida, the best team. great ranking, but they're still an afterthought. It just didn't register with me. I'm like, they're really good. So, okay, I want them to win, but I can't cheer for Florida, right? No offense, T. Phrase. His brother played anyway. But I don't love LSU either. But LSU's people are so good to me. Right, like some of my most some of my most legendary interactions at the CWS over the last 15 years have been. It's almost all LSU people.
You don't have to love them to.
Right, we got Shane. We got to be a bias. I don't know about these beer god. Legendary stories. So it's cool, but I don't really care who wins tonight. I just want to see. I mean, because they're going to break records. You've already got your breakfast. But I told the guy at Subway, I said, there's something about me that's kind of cheering for LSU because I want some sort of T-shirt from, we got 9 guys, we need 27 outs. We got to get 27 outs. Does anybody remember when Jay Johnson uttered that famous phrase in day 1 of their elimination back against the wall against Wake? And they didn't lose until yesterday. Like, there's something cool about how he just calmly laid that out there. We got 9 guys. We got to get 27 out. We got 9 guys available. We got to get 27 outs. We got to figure it out. So I kind of like, that's a cool story. Like, I want some 9, 27. My man Jamie can help me with the math. But I also think it is interesting how Florida has such good players. And I still don't think. I mean, how many people did you hear say, "Oh, I'm taking Florida"? It was either Wake. No. From the start, it was almost
nobody.
Yeah, it was Wake or LSU, right?
Well, and even when you look,
I think I was the only dummy that said Virginia.
I mean, Tennessee was talked about.
Because remember, Tennessee had the arms to come through the losers bracket.
Right, they were talked about. Stanford was talked about. Oral Roberts, because they were a Cinderella, was talked about. But nobody talked about Florida, and it's because they weren't very flashy. They had Langford, they had Caglianone, they had a bunch of other talented players, but they aren't flashy. They didn't score more than 5 to 8 runs coming into the College World Series. So in order for them to put their name on the map, they just had to be that team that just grinded out W's.
Yeah.
And they did, but they still got slept on because of it, because they weren't Wake Forest, because they weren't LSU, as you pointed out. But no, tonight, LSU, I need them to win. Selfishly, I do. For one reason, it would put some change in my pocket.
Selfish.
For 2, it would be the 3rd straight year the T-shirt works. T-shirt works.
Hey, so of the 14 guys that came to the plate, 2 didn't record an official plate appearance because they walked. So let's say of the 12, how many guys that had more than 1 at bat, did not get a hit yesterday for Florida?
I'll say
play
2.
it safe. Play it safe. He had 23 hits. Play it safe. How about none? Everybody that had more than 1 official at bat had a hit.
I can tell you who had 5 and who had 3.
Golly,
and they're the 2 names I are already rattled off.
Tonight's going to be a gem, regardless of who pitches.
Well, I'm curious if it's Skeens.
Can't. You make it an inning or 2.
Maybe can.
Oh, boy.
We'll be back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
And the LSU faithful making up 98% of the people in this building are on their feet. Got him swinging 17 strikeouts, matching the 9-inning record here in Omaha in a finals.
It's the way it's supposed to be, Rav. We're supposed to be tied going to the ninth. That's the way this entire series has been. Don't go anywhere.
Talk about supposed to be. That's how everyone drew it up, right? Ty Floyd, 17 strikeouts in game one. Everybody had that bet.
Hey, so do you know my favorite thing about KP? Shane, you know this. Like, I've known him forever. High school opponents, the whole nine. KP is one of those guys, and I'm talking about Kyle Peterson, that is so comfortable in who he is. Every time you're talking to him, it's like you're on his couch or at the bar, and you're just talking baseball
and you're learning something.
Like that's his vibe. You've done this. You've been on TV a ton, right? So sometimes, hey man, roll your shoulders back. Listen, my man could be slouched in his seat. He could have his hands in his waist or at his waist. He just gives you the vibe that he knows what the heck he's talking about, and it's at his own tempo. Like he's a real one. There is no manufactured broadcast. There is no let me check my notes. Nah, man. He is just low key shooting a breeze talking baseball. He's fantastic.
Well, and that's why I said
and that's if you have to do TV, because driving back from KC, it was K2 all day, every day. Because you talk about the ability to paint a picture.
Well, he's done it once or twice.
So there's two things that Kevin said the other day. There was a ball hit, and it turned out to be a long single, and it was I think it was Saturday night. And from the moment that ball was hit, and I'm listening on radio, I'm in another state. And it's like, and a long single, right? Because he's talking about where it's hit. And he's talking about the two players that are running that could make a play. He's like, that's going to get down. He cuts it off. Oh, heck of a play. At no point did I ever think that was going to be a double, even though he said it was hit towards the gap because of the way that he described your boy cutting it off. It's like a fantastic play in the outfield to hold him to a long single. And I'm just like, see, that's what I need in my life. I don't need balls coming off the bat and people lead me to believe that it's a home run and it's a freaking can of corn. I don't need any of that. Like, I knew exactly how that ball was hit just by listening to him.
You know what I'm going to say? And this one's hit to center, Cruz underneath it, gives the fair catch signal, and puts that one away. Two down.
He's just so good. It's just like that's how it's supposed to be. Like he's just when you have
very few that can do it.
When you have a gift, he's just gifted, and he can do 3 sports. And he's done hockey. Still making 4.
It's insane.
Dude, and I hate giving him any credit because he's my friend, but he's just ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. But did you see the onslaught coming after LSU jumped on him early?
No, actually, I would have thought that Florida would have taken game 1 and LSU game 2. I would not have thought it would be the other way around, and Florida would completely blow them away after seeing LSU win game 1.
Let me ask you something, because you play some short. You think it would be easier to let 23 or 23 hits roll off your back or 4 errors?
23 hits.
Right, because that's kind of a right. Like, yeah, maybe they used them all
and
up.
If we're gonna field a ground ball, how about we use 2 hands if we're trying?
I don't know, man, but they've been piecing together this mental infield, trying to save arms and do like it's just.
Hey, trust me, I'm with it. But watching Thompson field a ground ball every now and then, I'm like, man, it's not the move. If you're trying to turn 2, if you're trying to roll them and you're in front of the ball, to have 1 glove down.
4 of those 5, he's got
your hand. Like, no, so do it collectively.
So you think the hits are more of the anomaly? And obviously, you're not going to see more than 20 hits in a game. I mean, very, very, very rare. But you think that one's easier to shake off than it is the 4 errors?
I really do, because
they had 5 as a team.
What you can take away is this. Look, Florida was seeing the ball really well. The wind was helping a ton in this game because, if you looked at some of those home run balls that got shot straight up into the clouds, it was just carrying over to the fence.
And it was a lot cooler yesterday than maybe you would have thought just watching on television.
And
it was not hot.
And you can talk about momentum. Right? They had a lot of momentum once they got that first home run and then the grand slam and then the hits kept coming. So when you're stringing together hits, when you're comfortable, when you're confident, it's easy versus if you have 3 errors, 4 errors, that's a mental thing that only you can really shake off. No matter who talks to you, you have to be the person to brush that one off the shoulders. You need to get that next ground ball. You can't be thinking about it for 3 innings until that ball comes to you, but you are. Because at that stage, if you know one error, which it did, led to a grand slam, and now all of a sudden, after having a lead, you're down 3, you're like, okay, this was on me. So you're thinking about that as runs and hits are just piling on.
We've seen that a 2 or 3 times in this series where kind of an innocuous, we saw it with Braden Taylor in TCU. An error at third turned into 3 runs, right? We saw a slippage from short on a throw turned into a crooked number. We saw yesterday a Bootsy Collins. Shane, do you know who Bootsy Collins is? Okay, we won't Google. You're going to be like, how would I have known who Bootsy Collins is?
Makes me feel better.
A boot turns into a potential grand slam. Just look at the glasses.
Yep. Got it.
We had George Clinton, because George Clinton used to do some stuff with Bootsy Collins. We had George Clinton on.
Oh, if you would have said William Earl Collins, I would have known. Come on.
We had him on an interview once, and we had to let him go. He started talking about Viagra and doing concerts, and we were like, this ain't going to go well. Shane, do you remember that?
I'm trying to forget that.
Dude, I'm serious.
Hey, what are you using to strum that guitar?
Bag. Oh, shoot. But I like, you just didn't see it coming, man.
No.
Kind of like,
but I did see 3 games coming.
Kind of like the Cardinals winning in London. You just
didn't see that coming either. I also
yes,
you
did. You had to get off the schneid.
Well, I'll tell you
even though Wainwright this weekend was still throwing BP. Wowzer.
So I'm ashamed to be a Cardinal fan. I'm ashamed.
Stop it. You're rocking the gear.
I always am.
By the way,
I am ashamed at my fan base.
Why?
They were the ones that forced Adam Wainwright off Twitter. Adam Wainwright closed down his Twitter like a bank came with a foreclosure.
Dude, he just
shut it down. And for what reason other than one game? Like, let's really think about this for a moment, because he hasn't been fantastic. I'm with that. But if you look at his last 6 starts, there has only been one time where he's allowed more than 3 runs, which for a guy that's 500, it's pretty good when his velo is going down. Okay, 3 runs, that's okay. His ERA isn't great, but in 6 starts, like if you're only giving up 2-3 runs, your offense should be able to pick you up from those 3. There was only one time where he had 5 runs in that 6-game stretch, and they won the game. He got the win in that game. So we're talking about a fan base that watched this guy throw roughly 5 to 6 innings an outing and then get after him after one game. And I know you're frustrated. I'm frustrated too. The team isn't good. You're in last place in the Central. You're watching the Reds do something that you thought should be you. I mean, you flip-flop what the standings look like from last year to this year. I get it's frustrating, but to come after a pitcher with like nasty things to say, you're talking about one of the more unselfish, character-driven individuals.
He's Mr. Cardinal, isn't he?
He sang the national anthem on opening day. Who does that? He's a dad, right? He's a dad of this team.
Oh,
I mean, it's okay to get mad at dad every now and then.
Yeah.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, who carries most of the respect? It's dad.
So the only guy that I've seen get this much heat that toes the rubber for the Cardinals, because there's so many Cardinals fans here locally, is your man, Mr. Cecil.
Brett?
And it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, Brett took a ton of heat.
But that was a guy, if there was anybody, if we were going to shut down his Twitter account.
Yeah. Well, can't Closenthal. I mean, Trevor Rosenthal.
The Rev.
He went to an all-star game and then all of a sudden pitched like Cecil. So, yeah. I mean, relief pitching always is maybe it's just pitching in general gets the target. Who knows? All right, we'll set up the show when we come back.
Maybe.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back. Hi, Thomas, you're correct. It's OV Day, baby, in all caps. On the stream, we appreciate all the comments that we get throughout the show. If you want to get involved, you can send us a message on the stream if you are on YouTube. That's Hail Varsity Radio. That's Hurrdat Sports. We are live there now. If you want to give us a call, 888-638-4876. We take calls all throughout the show. 590 ESPN Radio here in Omaha, where we are live right now. We'll be on in Lincoln starting at 9 o'clock.
Kafor.
On KFOR. Kafor. Like Okafor.
Yeah, Preston. I have an Okafor. We have an Okafor.
Yes,
we have Preston. We had his brother Wes.
Mm-hmm.
They had an older brother Collins who played running back.
Are we delivering pizza? Pies?
I don't know, but that's the place in Lincoln that everybody loves.
Look at the thing he's wearing to
cup his back.
That's what you should wear when you're coaching.
Hey, so Shane, what's Lamar's? Did Lamar start in Lincoln? Donuts.
Oh, I'm like,
hey, I love how you're looking at me.
You're
like, I'm like, shoot, man, is it a pimple? Is it a horn? You're looking at me like this idiot.
I'm like the Subway guy.
So I know that there's one off of Harrison, but I thought that place started in Lincoln. That dude had some. I did not know Lamar's was popular like that in Omaha.
So did we go through this before?
No, we never talk donuts. We usually try to talk.
What's
sports.
the best donut shop?
Listen, don't ask me because I'm weird and I only eat 2 donuts. So
I'm going to guess glazed, like just a normal glazed donut.
No, sir.
Are you like a cake donut guy?
I'm not a cake snob. Some are raised greater than cake. I'm not that dude. I'm a fritter guy.
All right. I knew that apple fritters.
Yep.
Yeah,
and I'll even blueberry.
I remember you went around to like 7 Krispy Kremes.
So I'm that dude.
Fritters.
I'm that dude. Right? Like you tell me a good grocery store, a knockoff bakery, like I'll go try a good apple fritter. So I'm team apple fritter. And I'm the dude that likes the blueberry, the flaked kind of glazed guy. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, so
flaked.
The blueberry, just like the little speck. So Cracky Creams has it. Even though they stopped kind of making it. Hostess now makes it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
the Hostess makes one, and so now you can see them in a lot of places. And cake or raised, they don't have them raised normally. They're usually always cake, but those are the only 2 donuts I eat. I don't, because I'm pretty good about it. Like if if I'm gonna splurge, I'm going to. So I don't waste a lot of splurges. Like I don't eat candy unless it's a gummy bear. And I'll only eat a gummy bear depending on what else I want to splurge on. Like, so I'm not just like, it's not just like a free for all.
Haribo.
Listen, I saw the rings.
I like Boo better.
We Googled the pronunciation probably 4 years ago on
of Haribo.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. They had the rings at a knockoff place. The rings like you used to buy or you'd sell in school. The rings, not the gummy bears, the rings, the old school rings that look like gummy lifesavers at a little knockoff.
To bring you back?
Basically, it's like the 4 Aces of Omaha. You're getting acclimated to the city. You're kind of go to 4 Aces off of Farnham. Or Leavenworth. It's across the street from the old Leavenworth Cafe on 24th.
Not to be confused with the pop group, the 4 Aces.
Go to 4 Aces. It's a nice little thrift convenience store.
I got you. Yeah, okay. I see it.
You may get the Willies, but you can find some good stuff in there. You can get old school now or later.
Does it have a sign that says low price?
Yes. Yeah. They'll have like beer nuts and peanuts and stuff like in a grab box. You better check the expo date, but you're going to get good old school candies.
I'll take it.
Okay. 4 Aces.
Listen, man, thank me later. It's part of the Omaha culture.
Normally what I do, I check out what you tell me to check out, and I do thank you later. So.
Shopping is an experience.
A lot on the recruiting trail, so we'll get into that throughout the show. We're talking to Sam McKewon.
By the way, they're going to blow our whole over-under of local guys out of the water.
We talked about that with Sauter on Friday because I had said, do you guys remember when
we put it at 4.5?
And I said 2?
Yeah.
I said 2, and I thought that was the number. And it was for the time.
Oh, yeah. Like I had to – listen, I try not to – I typically don't pick at the low-hanging fruit, but this was her second time tweeting at me. I don't care. This chick, Husker Janelle, right? Like tweets at me and she goes, "Do you remember when you said that Nebraska wasn't going to get either WS wide receiver?" And I wanted to because she tagged me with Hayes Fawcett. I wanted to because listen, I was about to go all in, and I was like, I'm not going to do that to Devon or Zay.
Morris.
But I was hoping she would respond because I was about to dice her up like cutlery. I was like, "Do you see? That's the thing, right?" And I'm not always gonna be right. But first of all, listen better. I didn't say that they wouldn't get either. I said Nebraska would be hard pressed to take both. Didn't think they wanted both. I still subscribe to that. Number 2, a lot happened in the last 130 hours that most of you don't even want to know about. You just want to be this nose up in the air, smell the roses, cool. Knock yourself out. I'm not here to pee on your parade or pee on your shoes and tell you it's raining. You love it. I want Nebraska to be good. I sent Coach. I'm not even getting into that. Anyway,
I will tell you this.
Listen.
I'll stop you here. Husker Janelle tagged the wrong person.
Listen,
I said I don't think they get either belt.
She has no idea. But see, I was gonna let her slide, but that's the second time she hopped on something some bum said on social media and attributed it to me. I'm like, she either can't listen, doesn't like me, or can't comprehend.
And
only two of those things I'll let you off the hook for. It's okay to not like me. I'm cool. Don't make up stuff that you want attributed to me just because you want it to. You can't listen. And I'll tell you, don't ask me any questions you don't want to know the answer to, because I'm not going to get on here unless I say it's my opinion or my 2 cents or I'm speculating. I'm not telling you anything that isn't facts.
Well, and let's not just rest with, hey, he made a prediction 2 months ago, 3 months ago, that they wouldn't end up with these 2 receivers. If people want to say, hey, Andrew, you were the one that said they're not going to end up with it. Well, guess what I didn't know at the time? I didn't know they were going to get DK. I didn't know that he was going to peer recruit. I didn't know that, conversation could be
that
had.
Wasn't even it. He's going to get credit from the guys that follow recruiting that don't really know. But that was only part of it.
Mm-hmm. But that's what I'm saying. There's so many
do you
things
really
that
want to know the
add into
Devon
it.
Hall story? No, you don't. No, you don't. And even Hall 2 Fridays ago thought he was out on Nebraska and didn't think he was going there. So cut it out.
Right.
I laugh, but
it's an ever-changing thing.
No, and listen, I usually take it easy on probably a little more kind to ladies, but you had no idea. Listen, I sat on it.
Did you have a draft?
And I have to be in a certain mood. I pick and choose when I want to go all in. And I thought about it and I was like, I'll let this one ride. It was but it was a pretty good weekend, I think, for Nebraska and recruiting and trying to establish a way to lock up the state. Right? What now? You're just
it's just people on Twitter.
What happened now?
It's on the Wayno thing. We'll just wait till we go to break.
Are you mad about Wayno again?
I think there's people. Okay. Wayno's ERA is over 6, bro.
Oh, you're talking.
Let's ease up on the 1 game talk.
You gotta. That's from Matt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that Listen, he's just kind of I told you he's very cynical when it comes to the Cardinals, but he's just cynical in nature. It's not personal. He gets at me. It's good nature. He's good nature.
Say though,
he's
when
a good dude.
You talked about your past Husker DM. You said, "Listen, what did I say about Wayno? What did I say? I said, look at the last 6 games. I didn't say look at the season.
He's good natured. He doesn't. He's hard on his own team.
I'm with it.
He's hard on the Cardinals.
I'm with it.
We've been going back and forth for years. This is
fine. 1 game in 6 is what I said.
Get up, baby.
Is what I said.
Get up, baby. Get up, baby.
Let's go back and get the details.
Hey, so listen. That's the one team you live and die for, right?
100%.
Okay.
I'll do it for the Blues too, like my St. Louis teams.
Yeah. So we got to get you more invested in a college team to lessen your angst, because I've been. You got on me too, right? The whole Goldschmidt and Arenado thing. I thought we were going to fight for 7 days. I get it, but we gotta spread your. You're only passionate about a couple of your teams. So when you start knocking in that neighborhood, it's like
you want me to get passionate about Tulane?
Warning, protected by Viper. Please step back. You're just not having it.
I'll bite, man. I'll bite the apple.
It's all good. I'm glad we set the lineup because now we know that Sam's coming up at least. I'm telling you though, Maddie's cool though.
I did say it. Sam McKewon halfway through the segment. He's coming on next. We have a packed show. Brady Oltmans at 8:45. The sports cleanup at 9:30. Your recruiting questions at 9 o'clock, and then Phil Stanton to close out the show. We'll be back with Sam.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Sam McKewon. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. That kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
By far the most impressive Nebraska drive of the day. Diedrich for the first down. Ball is inside the 20. Diedrich cuts for the end zone, Diedrich into the end zone. So he comes right back with Darren Diedrich.
So we welcome you back. Coffee and Cream in the morning, top of the 8 o'clock hour in his usual time slot. The guy that does just about everything. Although, you got some goodies, man. I'm all in on guys like Evan Bland and Amy Just. But Sam McKewon holding it down as we come back with some highlights, Sam, of a guy. I don't know if it's over or under or just appreciated. Darren Diedrich, who we lost over the weekend, lost his bout, just 44 years young, serious bout of lymphoma. Cancer sucks, but man, Sam, when you heard the news and you did kind of the little write up, what were you thinking there?
I knew about the story from 5 or 6 years ago.
Right.
Now there weren't a lot of stories in between. And so I saw the tweet. I assumed it was that, but you never quite know. So we kind of got to wait for the AP to put something out because, I covered Nebraska football at the DN from
Daily Nebraska, and a lot of you great ones.
1996 through 2000, and then I worked for a small website in 2001. So I covered a good chunk of Diedrich's career, not the 2002 season, but a lot of it. And I always felt like, he was really talented. He kind of had a tough act to follow. So, if you look at, and I think all about what it's like to compete in a great room. In Diedrich's case, he was the starter in 2001 for sure. He was the number one guy, and then he shared it with David Horn in 2002. I think he always had to be like, I'm not Pharrell Buckhalter, I'm not Dan Alexander, I'm not Amon Green, I'm me. And I think that I don't know that was always an easy thing to manage. He had
culturally as well, Sam. You're spot on.
Yeah, he was from Canada. Really smart guy.
Scarborough.
I don't think it was easy for him to have to follow in those footsteps of some of the other guys that had been there. And Corral and Dan weren't necessarily the similar people, but I think that he had a very nice season in 01. Obviously, I remember a couple of costly fumbles in his career.
Yep.
In the 99 Big 12 championship game, I think he's the one that fumbled and gave Texas its only score. And then obviously against Colorado in 01, but he was a good back. He was really talented. He was a really talented guy, very fast, very physical, and had a nice career. Tends to get forgotten a little bit. There's a gap between, when Corral left and when Corey Ross took over, and people don't always remember who was in between. And that was Diedrich. That was David Horn. Those were the two main guys in that period of time.
Sam, on the heels of a heavy recruiting weekend, 8 commits last week alone, had another big Friday, getting 2 Bellevue West Thunderbirds. We touched on them a little bit in the last segment, in McMorris and Hall. Let's start with Hall here. A week ago they're all out. Now a week later they're all in. If you could give me one word to describe how you think conversations had to go in order to make this flip happen.
I think the word I would probably,
how about leverage?
Here, they had to. I think there just had to be a meeting of the minds about Hall's desire to actually play at Nebraska, and again, I'm not saying that receivers are interchangeable, but you can go find another guy that that does a lot of what Devon Hall does out there, and so there are positions where that's much harder to do. Receiver isn't necessarily one of them, and so I think Nebraska had options, and every team has options at receiver, And so I think that there just needs to be clarity about, if you want to come to Nebraska, then come to Nebraska and do it now, or I think there's a sense that we're going to move on. And I think the initial time, I think it was like, okay. And then I think there was a conversation between family and Nebraska. Mm-hmm. We are where we are. I think it's a plus for him for sure. Right. To be clear, there are a few players who have left Nebraska and done really well by that decision, for a variety of reasons. The one that I think of is Easton Stick. That was the best decision he could have made, to not be fourth string at Nebraska as a walk-on or whatever. He goes to North Dakota State. He builds a life and a career that he would not have had at Nebraska because Tim Beck didn't believe in it.
And he gets a second chance. He gets a second contract, and he's laughing all the way to the bank.
Right. So there's circumstances where you do that, but there are a lot of circumstances where there are kids who leave, and I'm like, and no offense, another one. He went to tight end U, and that all made sense. But there's other circumstances where I'm like, even if you have a great career somewhere else, that school's not going to care. And I think Tennessee is an example of that. Like, I don't think Tennessee has that much really fidelity to any player who's not named Peyton Manning or Heath Schuler, who was a politician and was famous there. So they just don't, I think if you go to Nebraska, even if it doesn't go exactly the way you want, I think you're recognized and you're part of that family for a long time. And, so I think he made the right decision to go to Nebraska. I just think that, and we'll see, what's in store for him. I think he's a very good player, and we'll see what happens. Just like Xavier Betts made the right decision. Xavier Betts went to Nebraska. He had a couple of interesting seasons where he did some cool stuff. He left the program, but you know what? When you go to Nebraska, you get to come back, and that's exactly what happened. And he goes somewhere else, and he didn't go back. So, that's part of why you picked Nebraska. And I think Betts is in good shape too. And to be clear, if Xavier Betts is going right and in good shape, he's the most talented receiver on that team, and maybe the most talented receiver outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. in the Big Ten. I'm not exaggerating. That's how talented he is.
No, what's funny is we kind of undersell that. So this whole thing is weird, right? I reconcile this in my head, and full disclosure, right? I see most of these guys a ton more than, let's say, like the layperson or the people that follow recruiting or the people that actually do recruiting. And what you just said about Betts is interesting because we forget that Betts' numbers coming out of high school and his testing were like in the top 1% in the country. And we undersell him because of what he's been through. Yet there will be guys that have followed that don't produce near the numbers, the productivity, even have the track numbers, and we fawn over. It's like, which is it? Or are we just prisoners of the moment? It is such a strange phenomenon. You can have you can have a proven guy with huge numbers, but if he's not going in Nebraska, it's like, he's okay. But if you got another guy who's got really good measurables but hasn't done a goddamn thing, but he's going to Nebraska, it's like, whoo, right? And that's not for the school to worry about. Rule is fantastic. That staff is doing their thing with evaluations. It's the perception that builds. It's not ill will, but I know how a lot of these guys at the high school level feel about how the fan base has treated them. And that just is what it is. I can't apologize for that. Like I know how some of these guys feel.
Yeah, I would agree with almost all of that. I'll tweak a few things. First of all, I don't know that what I would describe as the broader fan base is thrilled that these kids go to Nebraska. There's a specific.
So maybe the empty can rattles the loudest.
Well, that there's what you would call an informed niche of the fan base, which is informed by us as media, that has a, and I've said this before, and this is not true of me, I don't think, but so I don't want to levy the critique too hard. I think local media are too hard on the local athletes. And by that I mean recruiting media and all this other stuff. Now I see it manifests itself more in basketball than I do in football. And I think it has to do with, person X, and this is true in a marriage. You know everything about your spouse, all the things that are annoying about your spouse, all the things that are annoying about your own kids. You don't know what's annoying about, your friend's spouse. You might know them a little bit, but you don't know everything about it. And I think part of what happens is people know so much about local prospects, and they don't know anything about some kid from Kansas City, that a lot of times the whispers become louder than the strengths without understanding that, relatively speaking, kids around here are normal, no more flawed than some kid from another place, and maybe less flawed. We just don't know that because you either don't take the relativity into account, or B, you haven't been around that much, or whatever it is. And so I think sometimes, and again, I have been ridiculed, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but like, people will tell me, I can't believe that you don't understand that all these other schools that are around here didn't offer player X, Y, or Z in basketball, so why should Nebraska? And my answer has always been, it isn't their responsibility to offer those kids. Those kids don't live in Nebraska. It's Nebraska's responsibility. Tim Miles didn't do a good job. It's Tim Miles' job to do that. That's what I would always say.
Or the same, conversely, but along the similar thought, you may see other schools offer, knowing good and well, like in football, those kids can't say yes yet.
Right. So,
it's like the kids know, like they know when they can't say yes. But all we care about from the outside is that school X offered. I'm like, you guys.
Right. That's exactly right.
The student, they're starting to feel a certain way about you guys, and you don't understand what you're doing. Right. Like,
right.
It does breaks my heart is a little too whiny, but it's just like, can we just chill for a second and let this thing happen? Because the kids talk, the players talk, and the coaches talk. Like, you want to keep, you know better than any, because I talk to you so much. But like, it's like, sometimes I don't think we know what we're really it's not damage, but the info that we're providing for people to respond to.
Right. And like, again, like, I don't want to, and I make lots of perceptive errors too. And people will, and I'm clearly over whatever as it relates to local prospects, including in basketball, which again, when people say to me, Creighton this, Creighton that, I'm like, listen, Creighton's probably going to be pretty darn good over the next however many years because of Isaac Trout, Jason Green, and Josiah Dotzler. And I know you don't think those players are good, because how could they be good? Because they played years. But I'm telling you, like somebody was telling me, hey, Isaac Trout's looking pretty good, and Creighton, whatever.
Yeah, they love him early on, man. Yes, they do.
He's a good player. Who cares what Virginia did or didn't do? He could score. Well, yeah, he scored for 4 years in Grand Island. Yeah, he could score. He was working against triple and quadruple teams for 4 years. You don't think he didn't learn how to score? I mean, so stuff like that. It's like, yeah, he's going to be better than Mason Miller. Can you believe it?
Sam, this seems like it stems from a certain particular
place. I think this is
a
lot of this though is built, because I feel it's just built up, man. It's like,
well,
you just want to start telling the stories, but we're not prepared to hear them.
It's like, he didn't lead his team to the state tournament. Well, that isn't his fault. I mean, how many guys do you want him to score around? Like, what do you want him to do? So like that kind of stuff. And it manifests itself quite often of like, people just kind of shrugging their shoulders and go, well, he must not be very good. Or well, he wanted to leave, so that means, he wanted to get away and he couldn't hack it there. And all those things happen. And I'm telling you, it happens more in basketball than football.
I don't know, man. We're quick to look at stars and who's offered and who hasn't, and we formulate all these opinions.
How many offers does this person have?
And I'm telling you, man, 85% of these people with comments couldn't tell you one iota about how to watch film. They just couldn't.
I couldn't either, but but I do watch a lot of it, at least with football. And what I would say is, again, what I take into account is just a basic principle of, yes, there are degrees of competition. And if a kid is playing in, 6A Georgia, yeah, the players are probably better than they are here. So, yes, the competition's a little better. When you turn on Gabe Irvin, he's playing against better players than he would play against in Class A competition in Nebraska. But relatively speaking, if a running back here in the state of Nebraska is really good at the Class A level, he's probably really good. There are exceptions to the rule, but they're not, so I think people just get very, and it used to be, if you go back 30 or 40 years ago, when you were in high school, people didn't
30, not 40.
But, when you committed to Nebraska and Rashawn committed to Nebraska, and Cal, everybody just assumed you guys were really good because why would Tom Osborne pick a running back out of Omaha who wasn't good?
Right.
He's Tom Osborne. They win all the time, and if he thinks you're good, well, then everybody trusts that. The challenge is Nebraska hasn't been that good for a long time. And Tom and people don't have the reputation of Tom Osborne and Frank Solich. And so as a result, I think there's a natural born, well, Nebraska, they'll take these guys, but who knows what's going to happen. And I think the high school coaches feel that a little bit, and the parents and all of those things. I just think at times we can be too tough on the local kids, as if, again, the real challenge is going to be, well, could they have played at Oklahoma?
Listen, I'm just going to take at least early on, Sam, and I'm not just puffing him up, but Coach Rule, especially locally with the latest commits, won out. Like Coach Rule, that staff won because they banked on themselves. They trusted their own eval. They played their cards a certain way. And lo and behold, people like it worked out for them. They were rewarded, right? So I don't know, like if he wins this year, and I don't know at what level, but you better look out because
this state would go insane.
This staff totally dictated the recruiting parameters for the in-state commits. Totally.
I believe that.
I mean, look how it played out.
He's a very strong personality.
Yes.
And I think he also,
if you add winning to that, you better hop on board. You better hop on board.
How quickly would this state shut up in regards to just all the noise that surrounds the first year of Matt Rule they win?
If I'm just telling you, if he wins, it's a wrap.
Yeah, so, I mean, fans want that anyway, and I think most of the people covering the program would, if they go 7-5 or 8-4, I think that's a stretch.
It'd be a lot more fun for us.
Oh, sure, yeah, like everybody can see that. I just think there's been, as it relates to the local talent, as we talked about, there's just a complexity around how we view, and maybe it's beneficial that Georgia really did want Carter Nelson. Because maybe it helps people understand that it's likely and maybe possible that people have been sleeping on prospects in this state. This is part of how North Dakota State and South Dakota State won national championships in the FBS, is by taking the kids that other the Power 5 schools didn't want, and they should have wanted and didn't because they weren't paying attention. And now those schools are coming in here and recruiting and now you see more schools coming into town and recognizing the value of the players around here. I think that's that's a good thing. And I think Matt Rule is willing to do it too. So obviously, Callan Bard out of Topeka, Kansas. Well, nobody was recruiting that kid, but Nebraska thinks he's good enough, and we'll find out if that's true. And one thing I appreciate about Rule is I suspect if I were to sit down and talk to him, he would say, hey, this kid, if you put him in this place or this place, he'd be a 3 or 4-star kid. And good athletes can be found everywhere. And I think the Rule is confident enough to be able to turn a player into something more.
After spending 30 hours at Hy-Vee Arena, formerly known as Kemper Arena, in that area, there's a lot of reverence for both Leipold and Kleiman. And I got into with a couple of guys that I felt like are pretty in the know about Barta and things like that at the high school level. And it's weird how relative to the state, they hold their coaches in similar, like you were using Nebraska and TO. That's a lot how the state of Kansas and Missouri feel about Kleiman and Leipold too, where they're the barometer, they're the benchmark. Like if they do this, then this must mean this, right? It's kind of scary if you're in the regional area how those coaches have garnered such respect so quickly from their talent evaluation.
I can believe that. I think both of those coaches are, they're probably selling their own way, but they're not what you call sales. And so, they're kind of salt of the earth guys. And so as a result, I think there's probably if he says it, he must believe it because that guy doesn't have enough personality to lie to me. So, I think there's probably some of that there.
You can't say that.
I think Kleiman's a really good coach, and I think if they had, I think he'd have been a great coach in Nebraska, and I think he's going to be a great coach at Iowa when he goes there and when Kirk Ferentz retires. So, Iowa's got it set up. I mean, they're in great shape, man. And that I think that will happen. By the way, when the time is right, we'll see if which AD Iowa goes after. Do they go after the guy at Kansas State, who I think would jump to the Big Ten in a heartbeat, or do they go with best guess? But yeah, good conversation. Probably not exactly what you wanted to talk about, but
hey, listen. Sometimes we just let you go, Sam. It's all good.
And aside from that, Sam, you better keep those listening ears open, because if you made a prediction about this and then all of a sudden 2 years later it doesn't happen, you'll probably hear about it.
I will. Yeah. All right, take care.
Hey,
see you, Sam.
It's a lot in there.
Sam McKewon. Yeah.
I like how when you bristle up in your seat,
when you talk about recruiting, you can really take a deep look into the weeds, and
we can come back to it.
Should we?
Yeah, it's fun.
We'll be back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
Job. Job to do that. That's what I would say.
Or the same, conversely, but along the.
To offer those kids don't live in Nebraska. It's Nebraska's responsibility. 10 Miles didn't do a good job. It's 10 Miles' job to do that. That's what I would say. They're around here didn't offer player X, Y, or Z in basketball. So why should Nebraska? And my answer has always been, it isn't their responsibility to offer them.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
They're around here didn't offer player X, Y, or Z in basketball, so why should Nebraska? And my answer has always been, it isn't their responsibility to offer those kids. Those kids don't live in Nebraska. It's Nebraska's responsibility. 10 Miles didn't do a good job. It's 10 Miles' job to do that. That's what I would say.
A lot in there in that interview with Sam McKewon. If you missed it, go back after the show and check it out on the podcast at Hail Varsity Radio, and you can hear the full 24-minute interview with Sam. Welcome back to Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. He's ED. I'm Andrew Rogers. We are happy to have you with us. Man, where to even begin? Where would you like to start?
I don't know, man. It's just a lot. Like, so I pit. There's a lot of things in my head, right? I just watched almost every good player in the state
at the 7-on-7.
At 7-on-7.
Those kids don't
right?
live in Nebraska.
Which low-key may be the most slept-on summer tournament, that 7-on-7.
And I get it, right? So in one hand, I want to say, oh, it's just 7-on-7. But so much of that is like the camp setting anyway, right? Offers from 7-on-7. I mean, whatever, right? So I look at Sean and I look at Avery Harris and I look at, so I hear this. Oh man, Ingerson isn't this, isn't that, isn't this. Did anybody watch Papio Friday and Thursday? Like, Ingerson is a stud. He looks like $1 million. He doesn't want to be a tackle. But because he's not going to Nebraska, it's whatever, right? Or what else? Like Thursday, Bellevue West. Hall, McMorris. Kalen didn't get a ton of work. He just was kind of, he's kind of their pulse, right? And I watched some of these guys play defense. Oh, the Bellevue West coach, he doesn't have his guys play defense. You guys have no idea what you're talking about, right? Like, you got a new, and I'm a big Gentile guy. I like their D coordinator, but you watch a lot. So I'm like, okay, these guys are pretty good. I know what the experts think. But these guys are pretty good. I watch Millard South. They won the whole darn thing, right? Those guys are pretty good. I watch a couple guys from Omaha North, right? Champ Davis, Donovan Jones. Those guys are pretty good, right? It's so interesting, and I'm going to pit this against states. So just spent time in the Kansas, Missouri area. Okay. I'm always trying to fact find to add to the repertoire. So I ask about Barta and what the perception is of Kleiman and Coach Leipold and what Kansas is doing. And see those fan bases. And Kleiman is a little tougher critic because he has Bill Schneider. But in Kleiman, they trust. Well, listen, it's unbelievable.
It's what he carried over, though.
If Coach Kleiman and Coach Kleinerman and these guys do this, and this, okay, this is how we feel. Coach Leipold won at a level that Kansas hadn't seen in a while. You're going back to like Reesing, right? And Mangino.
A while.
So they have kind of their expectation. Here, it's like, and I don't know if he's going to win, right? But here, there's such scrutiny, and we know everything, right? It's like we know more than he does. And I'm not saying he knows everything. Believe me, right? Like, I don't want to give anybody all the power, but for us to be so kind of skeptical of what he's doing in that evaluation, it's just interesting because you have to pit it against what we're used to. In other places, they've won more than they've won in a long time, so those coaches become the barometer. With Coach Rule, he hasn't won as much as the guy 25 or 20 or 15 years ago, or even 10 if you're talking about Coach Pelini. So he doesn't come with that kind of like cachet. But I'm just saying, it's fascinating to watch the level of scrutiny or approval or whatever based on the whole "what have you done for me lately" principle. Like, that's the thing that's kind of mind-boggling. And I'm not saying Coach Rule is petty and he writes stuff down, but don't think he doesn't have a long memory,
safe right? inside his brain,
because he does. And I'm just saying, and I'll use it with how he's gotten the guys in state here locally. Don't think that they're not running the show. They absolutely are. And you better be one. I say this in my own household with my own kid. You better be 100% sure that you can live with the outcomes, because they're not budging. They're just not. So you have to be able to live with the consequences. If you can live with the consequences of the decisions that you're making in terms of how you want to play this game, that's fine. Some people are, some people aren't. But either way, there's no question who I think's in control of this situation. Because I said this a month ago and it kind of flew under the radar. I'm not so sure. As a matter of fact, now I'm very sure the state doesn't have a good grasp of who Nebraska really wants, who they really don't want, who they'll take, who they're playing the optics game with. I'm just telling you guys, we have no idea. They're going to do what they do, and they're going to let the chips fall where they may. That I know for absolute sure. You may say a guy's a must-have, or he's not a take, or he's this, or I don't see this guy be. Listen, I'm convinced now more than ever. Nebraska is way ahead of the game. You don't have what happened with Hall and McMorris and some of the other things that have happened over the last 3 weeks and not be in control of the situation. It just doesn't happen. And I can say that and lay my head down at night and feel good. And I'm not just giving you Nebraska's perspective. I spent the last 2 weekends with Lamar McMorris, who is Zay's dad, who played with ETG, who I've known his whole life. I know the conversations that have happened with the Hall family. Don't have to know Hall's parents, but I do have a good relationship with Devon, and I have a great relationship with Nebraska. So, like, you know, what's going to happen with Carter Nelson? I don't know. I don't know. I saw all the crystal balls. I saw, you know, it's obviously swung to Nebraska. What happens with Pyfrom? What happens with Benning? You know, I'm not going to put my Caleb in that conversation, because for most people he's kind of an afterthought, which is fine, because that's just how.
Hey, you'll be Florida.
Well, that's the card that he's playing. I mean, he's playing his own hand. So however that happens, it just has to happen that way, right? Let's take I gave Ingerson as an example. I wish you could have watched him.
Well, that's just what I'm frustrated about. So I'm frustrated that a few bad eggs out there, whether it's in the fan base or whether it's even
sometimes
people,
it's in recruiting.
Well, I'm saying the people that align themselves with us. Sometimes it's the people that are even above us. I get frustrated at the fact that bad eggs in turn leads to conversation being dictated throughout.
Everybody tells me what Ingerson isn't. Go watch him play. Go ask Central. Go ask Miller South. Right? If we're fawning over, and Chase Lofton's fantastic. He great player. Right, 2025 tight end, got another offer, right? That's 5 now from Elkhorn North. Go look at Ingerson's frame, go look at Bert's frame, go look at Chase Lofton, go look at Carter Nelson, then just go watch football. And I'm not saying 7-on-7 is the end-all be-all for football, but I even coach a guy. Who is a gifted top 100 talent and Christian Jones that doesn't and has yet to play like a top 100 player. He knows it. I know it. The recruiting folks don't know it. Our head coach is like, hey, there's more in there. And what does Christian Jones say to me every day? Just leaving Thursday. I'm not a 4-star. I'm not a 4-star yet. Let's get better, coach. I'm not a 4-star yet.
Those are the players you want.
He's unbelievable. He's such a good kid. It's not even.
That's a gamer. That's a gamer.
And watch his evolution. Right? Spent the whole last couple of days with Tyson. There's a lot that the players think that just hasn't come to fruition.
And if you can dish it out, and this is a direction to the fans, recruiters, whoever. You can dish it out. You better be able to take it too later on.
No question.
We'll be back with Brady Oltmans.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. Happy to have you with us on a Monday, June 26th. Pretty crazy that the month of June is almost over. We're live from Hail Varsity Club and the H&H Chevrolet stage. Now it's time to be joined by Brady Oltmans. We'll continue the conversation about recruiting with him. He's Nebraska and recruiting for Hail Varsity. Is that a sleeveless shirt, B.O.?
Yeah, it's still already hot if you got to walk the dog out. So I just threw on a sleeveless shirt and head out into the June sun.
I feel like that's what you should wear when you go attend your recruiting visits, so that can be your look. Everybody knows when B.O.'s there, you can tell because he looks like he just rolled off his Harley.
Normally B.O. I'd make fun of you, but I'm not wearing anything. For those of you watching, I'm sleeveless too under here, man. So hey, listen.
Please tell me you have a shoulder tat.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't have any ink.
There it is.
Should I get something to be cool?
Ink?
B.O., at what age did you get your ink?
18 was the first one, and then the last one I got about a year ago.
When you were 18, was it like a girlfriend's name that you wish you didn't get?
Stop. He's not that.
No, please, come on.
Are you serious?
He's asking questions.
Does he seem like the type to go all in on a female for a tattoo?
I don't know B.O. enough.
B.O., I could barely get earrings in Dr. Don Benning's household, so I had zero chance at getting ink, even when I was an adult. And then at that point, I was too afraid of needles. I know.
This is the guy that would swim with a shark. He said today he would hug a shark if he could.
I've gotten lots of injections just because of asthma and everything else, but just the constant tapping of a needle on my skin and I have to sit still, not a chance.
Mm-hmm.
It feels good after a while, man. And once you get one, you just want more. You know what I mean?
Oh, this is so soothing.
That's why we see in videos people like spazzing out in the chair
are coloring my skin. This is so it's like a sauna. Stop. B.O., where are we after this weekend? I mean, Nebraska is supremely confident in what they're doing. When do you think the fan base will flip and then say, you know what, and we trust?
Oh, It almost feels, at least just in the reaction I saw yesterday, it almost feels like it's kind of already started doing that. Because I mean, you and I both know after the camp commits, those initial guys who kind of came up out of nowhere, no real stars, no evaluations. Coaching staff obviously liked them, but they weren't the eye-popping star prospects that fans want, And I think a lot of people took pause and said, "Well, what's going on here?" And I really thought back. I tried to think back as much as I could to that March, the VIP junior day, everything when they had, Rayola and everybody come in, because this was comparable somewhat in just that this was the priority recruiting weekend on spot. And you just see them build up relationships more. They've got more time to talk with kids. They've got more time to reach out, and they get to know them a little bit better, and they get to know Nebraska a little bit better and what the team's going to be like, what the culture of the team and the program is going to be like. And then you see having a good amount of in-state kids there, I think builds up the excitement. You have a lot of commits already from Texas and all over that were there. So I think that just kind of spreads the enthusiasm for the program. So when you get so many guys that come in that are uncommitted and that are still looking elsewhere, it's an infectious energy, and the coaching staff is a pretty high energy too, and that can be pretty infectious as well. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm around the program, and then I think probably about noon, spreading on into now the fan base. I think they're waiting for it. They're waiting for those commitments to come in, but I think at this point they see the trends and they say, okay, we can get behind this.
Speak to those commitments that are supposed to come in or could be coming in. Bo, power rank these guys for me in terms of immediate importance. You make the scale. No, this is your own thing, whether it's, hey, we need this guy because he's in state, or we need this guy just because there's lack of depth in a position group, whatever. Your scale: Carter Nelson, Ernest Campbell, and Kewan Lacey.
Oh, man. I probably go Carter first, just because he's your top in-state guy, and when you've got Notre Dame, Penn State, and Georgia all coming after him, it's easy to say, like, the two-time defending national champion got our top in-state guy, but he's also an 8-man gritty, grindy, athletic, overlooked kid for a lot of his recruitment up until probably about January. He just seems like the kind of guy Nebraska historically would get, and it wouldn't even be an issue. Nobody else would be able to come and get him because by 7 years old, he's already committed to Nebraska. Ernest is the fastest guy I've ever seen on a huddle tape. He just is the incredible playmaker that Rule and his staff like. He plays on a Refugio team that just, it's not packed with talent. So he shines, and it's in Texas. So, and especially that part of Texas where you know that he's going up against good competition, and he's still able to do the things that he's able to do. And he wants to run track as well. So it benefits two programs if he were to commit to Nebraska. So that stands out. And then Kewan, almost on a similar plane, he had that big season, but it was in private school in Texas. And between us, the competition is in public school. It's just so robust. That's where all the talent is. So if people are looking at private school numbers, they consider them a little inflated. He went to Lancaster, comes back, and his numbers weren't the same, but he still shows that same knack. It's not just inflation due to competition. So he stands out. And you look at the running back room now, they've got a good stable of guys in the play now. Quentin Ives looks like a promising guy that comes in the freshman class, and then Kewan joining him with a different skill set, but that same kind of speedy explosiveness. All three of them, I don't know right away, play year one, but all three of them, they look like they got a promising future if they were to join Nebraska.
So, Bill, as you're kind of watching this unfold and the class, I think it's going to end up being bigger than maybe some of the experts would have thought if you'd have asked us maybe 4 months ago. And I say us, I'm not an expert. You guys that cover recruiting. Are you okay with that? Have we kind of gravitated more towards being able to process guys and have this be about competition? And it's almost like Darwin, not to go controversial, but survival of the fittest.
Yeah, well, Nebraska's clearly not the only ones doing this. I mean, Michigan and Georgia jump off the top. They've already got 20-some commitments in their class. If things continue to go the way that they're trending, Nebraska will clear 20 by, the end of this week, or potentially by the end of your show today. But I think you also have to plan for it just because of the transfer portal itself. Like Rule's talked about, and I'm sure we've talked about numerous times, they like kids who get in the program and stay in there for numerous years. Now, that's not to say, lock it down, everybody's going to stay within the program. That's just not the way college football works anymore. You try to limit transfer portal departures as much as you can, but I think just by nature of the beast now, you have to account for it. And by doing so, you can work in the bigger recruiting classes, the bigger signings. That way you give yourself a little bit of leeway. Plus there should be a decent amount of guys who exhaust their eligibility after this upcoming year. That's something. And then ideally, I'm sure that they think that if there's a gap between scholarship numbers, that they can just promote somebody from the walk-on program because they're already building that thing up into a behemoth with guys still walking on last minute.
Take you the latest.
Yeah, it's baffling, but they're building up kind of a battalion of guys on that roster right now.
Brady, I saw this photo last week, and it's more of a culture question for you now. Because, we talk about how priority number one for Rule has been building this new culture from the very beginning. But we don't often get to see it, right? Like, maybe us, because we went to spring practice and, you're so knee deep in recruiting, but aside from that, like looking from like a fan base point of view, nobody gets to really see this culture being built outside of just, hey, here's a new guy, or hey, here's a photo. But is there enough of that for a fan to sit back and say, hey, I know exactly what they're doing? But after seeing the photo of them on the senior retreat, okay, so I'm talking about the guys that are already in the room when he arrived. How far do you believe that thought process goes when building a culture, when it starts with the guys already in the room?
I think it's big and it's important. One thing that Matt Rule did at Temple and at Baylor is he liked to keep guys around. He liked to rally them together for meetings, for going to bowl, or even just hang out in the players' lounge together. Play. That's why the ping pong and pickleball is such a big thing, is because you've got to be in the room, you've got to be off your phone to play it, and they get naturally competitive guys. That's just gonna it's going to bring you together by doing things like that. I think the senior retreat is just clear evidence that they like those guys coming together. They like to build that team bonding aspect. Because keep in mind, the staff and these players, they haven't played a game together yet. Like the spring game is what it is, and it's very purposeful, and it's in the total of the spring season. But it's not a competitive game where you're staring, a Big Ten schedule in the face, and that this coaching staff wants, I don't want to say perfection, but they want consistency. They want to push guys. That's how they get improvement. And it can be draining, and it's not for everybody. And, you see players say like, they're pushing us, but we like it, and we know it's going to get us better kind of thing. And I think the off the field stuff and retreats like that, they help build the trust that say like, okay, we know that they care about us. They have our best interest because they're able to do that and not just yelling at us on the field.
Brady, you may have to talk me off the ledge. I'm kind of that guy because, we're lockstep. He talks culture. He talks time spent. He talks off the field stuff. They go on retreats. All the things we do at the high school level. I don't know, man. You may have to help me stay a little balanced here because I know he says there's no Rule Aid, but I feel like I'm kind of thirsty.
Hey, do you guys win at Westside?
I'm kind of thirsty.
Hey, he's a high school coach at heart now. That's what we're finding out.
I need help.
Brady, we appreciate it, man. Enjoy the week.
All right, we'll see you guys.
We'll be back with more CNC.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes.
Believe it? Sam, this seems like it stems from a certain particular
I
place
think this is
inside of you.
a lot of this.
So stuff like that. It's like, yeah, he's gonna be better than Nathan Miller. Can you believe it? It stems from a certain particular. Well, yeah, he scored for 4 years in grade 2. He can score. Well, yeah, he scored. He can score. Well,
Rogers
yeah,
and Benning
for
will
4
be back
years
in
in
1
Grand
minute.
Island. Yeah, he can score. He was working against triple and quad.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
He can score. Well, yeah, he scored for 4 years in Grand Island. Yeah, he can score. He was working against triple and quadruple teams for 4 years. You don't think he didn't learn how to score? I mean, so stuff like that. It's like, yeah, he's going to be better than Nathan Miller. Can you believe it?
Having some fun on a Monday, talking recruiting. We talked a little college baseball to open up the show. We'll also end with college baseball when we talk to Phil Stanton. We'll clean things up in the next segment. But in this one, I want to get to some of your recruiting questions because these were filing through all last week, and I want to make sure that we can address them. And I think it's the perfect time to do it after seeing the month of June that this staff had in regards to recruiting. I mean, just try following along. Each week, there's a new crooked number. And sooner than later, we'll probably get up to that 24 that Florida scored yesterday. It just keeps rolling and rolling, and the official visits are out there. But there was a clip that we'll start off with, DB. Shane, can you pull up the clip that I had you put aside on Friday in regards to what Joey McGuire was saying, what they do at Texas Tech?
Okay, I got it.
And the parallels that could be drawn with Nebraska. Go ahead, Shane.
With us, our personnel department basically comes to me and says, hey, coach, this is who we've watched. Here's all their measurables. Here's everything we can find verified. with them, this is who we want to go recruit. And so when we first started doing that, the coordinators were like, now, hold on, you're telling me that we're not going to watch them? And I was like, well, no, you can, and we're going to. We're just not going to wait for you to tell us to offer them. And I said, okay, guess what? You get to go coach football, and it's basically, hey, here's who we're going to recruit, instead of, having to process all this film and get ready for a game and coach the team that we have currently. And so it streamlines the process. You definitely have to have some guys that you totally trust, and luckily we do. And so it keeps us ahead. We're developing relationships way before guys are offering.
Husker X's and O's on Twitter asked, how similar do you think this is to how Rule is running it?
I think there's something to that, but
do you also think they're doing it their own way?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do, because.
So do you like drawing parallels, or do you like relating one staff to another?
I can see some of it, but you have to be careful where and I actually think Texas Tech is going to be good this year, and I've said that from the jump. They're my surprise team in all of college football in terms of them having the ability to make a run at a college football playoff, which I'm saying it out loud. But having said that, I think you have to be careful. And listen, anytime you ask me a question, you have to understand that I can pit it against, or I probably will pit it against experience. Because I've seen so many talented players that put up really, really good numbers. They can't play dead because either it's emotional maturity, lack of actual outright toughness, don't really love to compete. And I've also seen guys that are as, let's say, physically gifted that sign their second NFL contract to play quarterback in the NFL. So, for every Easton stick, I can give you a guy like, Brian Knuckles, right, who was as gifted a player as I've ever seen. Broke every record at Coffeyville Junior College, but just for whatever the reason, didn't embrace the grind, right? Hadn't learned. So I'm very leery for blanket statements, because it's more than about numbers. It's more than just about, well, okay, if I make 90 tackles, can you move? I remember watching Patrick Willis in the SEC, and some people thought he was too small and he was undersized. And I told my buddy who's a Niners fan, I'm like, listen, man, this guy was the leading tackler in the SEC 2 consecutive years in a row. I don't care if he's undersized. I don't care if he's not as fast as you want him to be. He's twitchy, and he makes a lot of plays. And enjoy drafting an all-pro, right? But then you can turn around and get a guy like Landry from LSU, who looks like $1 million and tests out of the gym, can't play dead. So, you just have to kind of be careful. I think in college more than the NFL, it's more about relationship building, because college is such a grind. I think college football is much, 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 much more difficult than the NFL. So, not from a level of play, but just from what it takes
from a management standpoint
to survive.
Yeah, I think drawing parallels is a good thing to add to your points, and to even this reason.
Do you find it interesting that I always start with whether somebody needs a babysitter or not?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of distractions in college.
So you had mentioned how you think Texas Tech is going to have a pretty good football team this year, and could go really deep. Well, if you draw a parallel to teams like that, I'm cool with it. Obviously Nebraska's doing it their own way, and they have their own method to the madness. But if you can draw certain
because conversely, on the surface, Drew Down, remember, they like to see guys in person.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going on, even for as great as Sean Padden is, and I think he's a closet genius. It's not just about what Padden says.
Right.
Like, they want to see you. They want to see you come. Come hang out with us. Let's talk to you.
Yep.
So it's not just about.
Yeah, so there's more.
Yeah,
there's definitely more.
Definitely more.
But they also aren't afraid. At least a chunk of the point that I took out there, they're not afraid to be the first.
Yeah,
they're not afraid to send an offer. They're also not afraid to say, "Hey, let's coach football, and I'll bring you some gems." But you're 100% right in the stance of, "Hey, we got to go to this camp. We got to host this camp so we can see these people." But in the same light, I also think they have to do that. Because right now they don't have the credibility from anyone that they've done anything. And so in order to combat that, what you have to do is put yourself out there, put your face in front of other faces, create those relationships, get people to start talking about you, because if they like you, then that word of mouth will just keep extending and extending and extending. And then whether or not this season goes off without a hitch, well, at least you have something to lay your head on, that you can do it again next year and people can be like, yeah, I really like what you're saying. Yeah, I really like how you're operating. But I still think it's cool to draw some parallels. Danny in Lincoln asks, how can you not think the amount of stars recruits yield doesn't directly correlate to wins? Better players equals wins. Andrew.
Generally,
I haven't thought about it.
Generally speaking, yeah, like we've seen it, man. I hate listen, I see how Georgia and Alabama and Michigan, and I see how these guys recruit. I do. And I think good players 90% of the time yields good results. But what I don't like, and hear me clear here, is when you fast forward to making it all about stars. It depends on where you are in your journey to build your program. Some people, when you get to the top, it is all about the level of good guys that get you over the hump. But you still have to be a certain kind of coach. The only outlier in that, and I still think he was a good coach. Now, is he up there with his peers? I don't know. Is Les Miles closer to Kirby Smart than he is Nick Saban? Probably. But apparently Miles and Smart know what they're doing in terms of managing people. So it's not just about having good players. That helps.
It doesn't guarantee wins, though.
It
really doesn't. You can
it's tiered. I'm not here telling, like, nobody's saying it's such a lazy ass take. Like, nobody's saying good players don't help you win more games. It's relative to where you're trying to go, and it's relative
and where you're at right now
to where you're at. So I just think people that don't like watching development, even Alabama and Georgia, have to deprogram guys to fit their culture for how they want to win games.
And they didn't just become Alabama and Georgia overnight.
So it's like,
or at least the Alabama and Georgia that we know today. That didn't just happen yesterday.
It's just a lazy take. I mean, listen, and that's not to say I don't understand it, but there are lots of teams that have good players that don't win more games. And there are lots of teams that don't have as good of high-end talent that win lots of games.
And another take I kind of get tired of along those same lines is, well, if you're expected to win 12 games and you only win 8, but you still have good players, it's like, oh, well, you still won 8 games. You still made it to a bowl game. You still did this. But they didn't meet their expectation. So why is it okay to factor in, say, Nebraska in this case, who's looking to develop, who's still trying to feed their way into that recruiting class difference of what Sam talked about even last week when he talked, hey, the top 5 recruiting class is different than the 9, but the top 28 is not different than the top 46. Like, until you get to that separator, then yes, we can have the conversation of what you want. But don't pull Nebraska in and say, hey, if their ceiling right now is 7 wins, say it is as a general take for the fan base, and they only win 4 games, well, how is that any different than if the 12 team that was supposed to win 12 games only wins 8? Just because they got to a bowl game, there's difference there?
Or there isn't near as much scrutiny with the coach either, right? So,
but I feel like I feel like we
the,
saw that with Nick Saban though.
Well,
whenever they didn't get to the college football championship game, people are like, "Oh my gosh, Nick Saban! If he doesn't get to the college football playoff, well, this is not a coach that we want."
Yeah,
I heard takes like that 3 years ago.
I just think it's interesting. It's like all of a sudden Harbaugh got smart from the first couple of years at Michigan to now playing in the CFB. Remember when he couldn't beat Ohio State?
They were talking, hey, yeah, we're going to have to get rid of Jim Harbaugh. He can't win games at Michigan.
So it's just like, I don't know.
You got to give it time. You got to get it.
James Franklin recruits a lot of good players, right?
Yeah. Yes, he does.
Yes, sir.
And who came out with a list yesterday that said Penn State has like a top 4 defense in college football?
It's all relative.
There was a question that was asked to me yesterday. This is kind of
at the CWS.
Yeah, off the recruiting talk just for a hot sec. Hey, why does Coach Rule retweet things that don't relate to Nebraska?
It's a really good question.
And I was like, is it a really good question, Matt? Because why can't he just be proud of either like a certain player, a certain team? I also thought too, we talk about a sense of security and how one has to be okay with who they are so that before they start showing real love for somebody else. And so he retweeted that photo of like 4 Big Ten teams in the top 10 of defenses. It was Michigan, Iowa, Penn State, and Wisconsin. But Nebraska's name's not on the list. And he's like, why retweet that if Nebraska's not a part of it? Well, he's retweeting that because he's talking about, hey, we're playing against the Big Ten had the most on that list in the top 10. He's playing against those teams. Like, that's the conference that Nebraska plays in. He's excited to be a part of something that's great.
And remember, he is also a guy that enjoys trying to flourish and not being comfortable. So the more it's like, on a personal level, it's like us with 7-on-7 Friday. What do we talk a lot about? Let me say this the right way. Hey, this and this team's supposed to be good. Embrace the challenge. Hey, this and this team is supposed to be this. Embrace this challenge. Hey, these guys don't have these guys playing, so let's make sure we're dialed in. Sometimes as a staff and as a coach, you do things to keep yourself sharp so you can be better for the kids that you're coaching too, as a constant reminder. It's like I told you about Christian Jones saying, listen, I know, coach, man, a lot of people don't think I play like a 4-star. I'm not a 4-star yet. I said, hey, Christian, keep that same energy. Keep that same energy. Like I tell him all the time, right? But he goes down to Florida on Friday, and I knew we weren't getting him. And it's like, I give him a hug, or, I'll tell, I may pull Tyson Terry to the side on Thursday, and I'll say, hey, man, kind of introducing or embracing O-line versus D-line potential and things that like a year ago were kind of like, He's like, hey, you know what? Do whatever it takes. Do whatever. See, those are the guys, Easton Stick, I always bring up. I used to tell that staff, I'm like, Easton's a guy you don't have to babysit. Casey Sells, the guy you don't have to babysit. There were just all these guys that I look for when you have a certain baseline level of talent that I think this will get you over the hump. I see it in basketball all the time. I saw an 8th grader this weekend that some will consider the best in the country, right? And I watched him. I watched him a ton, and I've seen Bronny James, I've seen Mikey Williams, I've seen all these guys, and I'm like, the one thing that I look for in basketball that football gets all the time, but basketball coaches in college seem to be okay with it. How motivated is he? Because there's a reason you see 1,000 Division I basketball players in the transfer portal every year. And some of it is not unique to the sport. It's unique to the culture and the character in which you're recruiting guys. So I don't know. some part of it's just like regular life, man. You always want to hire the guys and gals that you don't have to have set the alarm to get out of bed to go to work. But somehow we think in sports it's different if you're just that gifted. And for as many people as we've seen flame out with talent, it's just weird that we keep gravitating towards that.
Flaming out with talent. You talk about guys that don't need a babysitter, and that's why you
Jamarcus
like
Russell,
them.
Achilles Smith, Ryan Leaf. I remember Justin Gilbert. I remember when Justin Gilbert was coming out of Okie State. He's a cornerback. Ended up spending some time with the Steelers. And I'm just like, this guy doesn't like playing. Like, it's just weird. Like, Leaf didn't enjoy playing. Josh Rosen didn't enjoy playing football.
They enjoyed the outside noise.
So
more
it's
than
like
they liked the
I
grind.
don't know why that gets overlooked.
I heard this story on the CWS, and it was the Mike Batzel coach story that they were telling. And a quote that he had said was, and I thought this was pretty interesting. There's two types of losers: those that can't listen and those that can only listen. So I'll say that again. Two types of losers: those that can't listen, which obviously, like if you can't listen, and those that can only listen, in a sense of saying, don't be a robot.
Yeah.
Don't just do what somebody tells you to do, because there's so many variables in sports to where you have to think on your feet. You have to think on the fly every now and then. And so I just thought that kind of fits exactly into what you were talking about with not needing a babysitter, not needing somebody to tell you what to do. You just do it because you know it needs to happen.
Yeah, I had a second varsity coach tell me on Friday, and I'm not offended. So hear my heart. And the first guy that told me is a good friend. This guy I don't know so well, and he said, one of the things that I admire about you guys is you don't have to always have great players, but you have a great culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if he's saying we don't have great players or we're not, or maybe he's just complimenting me the grind. But one of the things that I think is often undersold is the ability to, like, I don't know, just I can think of two games, and I hate them. I dread giving this example, but I think you could make the case that both Miami and Florida had better rosters than we did when we played them in the bowl game. Like, if you look at high-end NFL talent, and maybe not so much Miami, but it's close. And conversely, I look at the Arizona State roster that kicked our ass in '96, and we didn't think that. We're like, man, Rogers and Poole and who are Battle and Plummer, who are these guys, right? You look at, but we had a defense in which you're going to get a couple of first rounders out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when people looked at the high end talent, relatively speaking, it was advantage Nebraska. Mitchell Friedman, he runs a 4.9. They called him Fright Night. Man, he slept everybody he touched in Tempe that night, right? Wasn't an NFL guy. We had two on that roster, in Brown and
just somebody that plays with a lot of heart.
Sometimes life is like that, right? And you run into people that just are what I would call about that life. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I'm the worst guy to talk to about talent, because while I embrace it, I just know there's so much more to it, right? Somebody asked me the question, "Oh, I saw this on the message board, DB. I thought you'd chime in. If Bellevue West is this and this, how did they go 7-4?" And I'm like, well, first of all, they lost to Kearney, Westside, and Gretna twice. It's not like they lost to a couple of slouches.
Mm-hmm.
But number two, it's not always about talent.
And that's why
it's not always about talent. So it's just like
question. That's why I kind of died on the hill of it doesn't guarantee a win. At the end of the day, it doesn't guarantee you wins. It puts you in good position to get wins, but it doesn't guarantee that win.
Travis, Husker fan, in Dallas. He said Nebraska has gotten quite a few 4-stars the last 2 coaching regimes. It's hard to make good wine from bad grapes, but it's easy to make bad wine from good grapes. I don't know if necessarily I'm like lock, stock, all in, but I get the premise. Because basically he's saying what you're saying. There is no guarantee. But I get the lazy take, right? Oh man, teams that win national championships, they have a lot of good players.
There's no failure in sports.
I understand.
Is there, Eric?
I don't know. I look at
you asked me the same question.
I look at the Nuggets. I look at the Heat. I look at the Milwaukee Bucks. I look at a lot of teams that have a great player or two. But when you look at the roster, there's lots of teams that you'd trade them for. I mean, nobody was calling Steph Curry a prolific, top 15, top 10 NBA player until he started winning titles.
In fact, he got booed on draft night by the Warrior fan base.
So it's just weird. I mean, Yankees have a lot of good players, right? Haven't won a ton.
Not of late.
Dodgers have a lot of good players. Have won a lot of championships. So it's
sometimes you can spend to make. Right? Sometimes
but I'm not here telling you that good players don't matter, because I absolutely think you need a certain minimum. You need a certain baseline of talent. But I mean,
there's just a lot more to it than just.
I don't know. Somehow TCU was in the CFP.
There's just a lot more to it than just a number of stars.
And I'm not here to tell you that stars don't matter.
Good recruiting talk during the 9 o'clock segment here.
Those are questions that you saved for me.
There's still a couple of more that we need to get to. We'll do that as a part of the 6-packs this week. We'll do one tomorrow. We'll save one for Thursday. I think that'll be a good way to space them out the rest of the way. We'll do the sports cleanup.
Can't wait to stress.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, just so you know, none of them are about Caleb.
I don't care. I'm so over that.
We'll be back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Here's the
3 lead.
breaking ball to start, and Evans slam for Evans.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Things you wanted us to get to from the weekend, but we didn't.
Clean up on aisle 6.
It's the Coffee and Cream Sports Cleanup on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, before we get into it, I want to take a moment and tell you about the Beanery, the official coffee of Coffee and Cream in the morning. The Beanery. Did you hear the Mornery? Because I was
I thought you
Beanery
said
and
beanie
Mornery.
as in Beanie Seagal.
Beanie. Well, I shouldn't say we used to. We still call my nephew Beanie. His nickname is Butterbean.
What is the name of that? Oh, State Property. Don't Google that. But it's a movie with Beanie Seagal. I think they made 1 and 2. Kind of low budget.
Did they make coffee in that movie?
No, they kind of acted like they were on a lot of coffee.
Oh.
Always on a natural high.
Kind of like us on the show right now?
Yeah.
A natural high.
Oh, shoot.
Check out the Beanery. Beanery is my favorite place to get coffee in the morning, especially on a Sunday. You know, you just be at the farmer's market or church or whatever. Wake up in the morning and say, hey, I want to get a bite to eat, maybe my morning fix. Check out the Beanery. Also, if you aren't going downtown for the CWS, remember this week is a chance to check out the Storm Chasers. They will be back in action on Wednesday, June 28th. But as they face off against the Iowa Cubs, make sure to go on Thursday. That is replica jersey giveaway night.
That's the night for Andrew.
Where we can wear our jerseys, DB. Speaking of jerseys, are we going to go to the CWS together today to wear our jerseys?
I don't have a jersey.
Oh, you don't? You can borrow mine.
I'm pretty sure you're wearing like smalls.
Tell you what. How about this? We will cancel out the breakfast that you owe me.
If I wore a jersey?
Just to wear a jersey to the CWS.
I'll take the $9 to $12.
But you owe me a couple of breakfasts.
That's fine.
You're gonna take that?
Yeah, like if you said, so let's just do the equivalent. If you're like, man, DB, $25 to wear a jersey, I'd give you the $25.
If you owed me $100, would you say jersey?
Maybe. Depends on how many people are gonna be in public. I mean, not at this. I'm not wearing
not at the CWS.
Nope.
How much money would you have to be paid in order to wear a jersey to the CWS?
Probably $500-600.
What? Come on.
I don't even know what to wear with that.
I just wear shorts.
And a
athletic shorts.
And a jersey.
I do it all the time.
No.
No one ever says a thing to me.
Not
They'd
a
be like, "Oh, DB, you're wearing jerseys now."
Does it depend upon the jersey? I mean, if it was hockey or football or.
If we had to rock a jersey at the CWS tonight, what would it be?
You're not doing baseball.
He's wearing a Steelers jersey.
No, I would actually do a button up, so it would be baseball.
Baseball.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Then like a
You wearing your
V-neck
Dodgers
mesh.
jersey? Do you have a Dodgers jersey?
No, I have a Dodgers long sleeve tee.
We'll find a way to.
My
get
buddy
you a
Kelly got
Dodgers
it for
jersey.
me. It'd probably be a baseball jersey. You know, button up.
Guarantee
sleeves.
you're wearing a West Side baseball jersey.
Hey, listen, they have some sweet. They have some sweet.
There it
unis.
is.
They have
There
some
it
sweet
is.
pinstripes, but I just don't. It's just not my jam. I only have one jersey,
And
it's Vince Carter, and it's a tank.
please tell me you just wear that. No undershirt.
No, I did one time. Like,
You're going to the pool.
yeah, that was like in 01.
Can we add a 2 instead of a 0? So 2021. So it sounds better.
No, it was literally 01. It was literally 01.
Oh man, I feel like I could get you in a jersey someday.
No, you know what?
It'll happen, people.
Yeah, guess what? That would be a collision. Like we'd have it Dingman's. Which, by the way, I don't know if you've ever been to Kemper Arena or Hy-Vee Arena in Kansas City.
Why is the parking lot like?
It's a free for all. It's.
So if they put a Dingman's across the
if
street,
if you don't come out of there with a ding, you probably didn't do it right.
This is a message to Darcy and the team to put one over there.
Yep. I know you got the 4 great locations here, and
Hey,
man,
why
you got
why'd
the
you make
charitable
your 5th one in
contributions.
Kansas City?
Put it in KC, right next to the Hy-Vee Arena, because people cannot park and you will get a ding. So make sure you visit dingmanscollision.com.
If you find yourself downtown, maybe go check
I'm
out
going down.
Zipline Brewing's Omaha Tap Room.
It's just dingmans.com. I said Dingman's Collision. I don't know why I said that. Just because.
Well, that's what's on their website, though. Dingman's Collision. How you feel?
My shoulder's crappy. But anyway.
Did you get that via work injury? Do you need dire law? I can keep going.
Hey, so
I'll keep rattling them off.
Listen,
right
so I saw our official or my buddy that needed
There he goes.
to see. He was out there on Friday, and doctor gave him a clean bill of health. So they investigated.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, visit dire.law if you have personal injury or check out. Like
He's
I said,
he's so
downtown
funny. He was hiding behind his sunglasses.
Speaking of injury, how about the stuff going on with Deion Sanders?
I know.
And how he got his blood clots removed, which I think is what the article was
so
telling me yesterday.
So I told you I don't really mess around with IG. I just kind of creep. But I do follow Deion.
Coach Prime.
And so he kind of gave the update with his family, and he set the record straight. And he said the amputation thing was worst case scenario, not like they just put it out there. Like, have you ever seen those commercials and they give you all the side effects? Like, they have to list all those, even though if they've done a 100-person case study, it's only happened once. Like, they have to say it. But yeah. The blood clots thing was crucial. Haven't you ever wondered why he walks like that? It's not just because he's cool.
Nope. I always thought it was just, hey, you get banged up during football. Like, I mean, I remember. Words are hard. I remember going to St. Louis Rams camp before they moved, and Torrey Holt was walking by, and he was signing some stuff, and he came over to me, and he shook my hand, and I remember looking at his fingers.
Yeah.
And they were all different shapes.
Hey,
one looked like an F, one looked like a G.
So you made fun of me for showing Ashley Johnny Rogers' hands.
I didn't make fun of you.
I was like, hey Ashley, shake his hand. Look,
I did not make fun of you.
His fingers are all doing their own thing.
I didn't make fun of you. I said he knows her, or I said he knows him. Ashley, like that.
Oh yeah, she was mortified.
That's why
She's
he
like,
can
you
make
can't
that.
be talking about this man's hands. Yeah, those things like.
Oh man, but that's from catching footballs.
Each one of them has its own Google direction.
Yes,
right. It's
exactly.
Like,
it's like, here are your 4 different routes to the destination.
Johnny's like, funny nephew.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it just happens.
Aside from that, Freddie Freeman joined the 2,000 hit club yesterday.
A sweet
Congrats
swing.
to your boy.
Yeah, wish they'd have won in extra innings, but that's okay.
Wish Kyle Tucker would have hit a home run too.
God, I can't. I just hate the Astros.
Hey, the next two players that are less than 100 away. One plays for the Astros, one plays for the D-backs. Who are they?
Oh.
Who's closest to 2,000, less than 100 away? One's an Astro, one's a D-back.
Altuve can't be that close, can he?
Mm-hmm. Altuve's the first.
God, that's pretty efficient. It doesn't seem like he's been playing that long.
I feel like he's the only option to choose from on that team now.
Without Correa.
Correa's gone.
Yeah, and Bregman's too young.
Right. And the second's a D-back, but he hasn't always been a D-back. Like, this is his first year in a D-back uniform.
That would be... God, that's tough.
Taylor?
Nope.
Everyday guy?
Devontae?
You could look at him and think old reliable.
Zach who?
What position does he play?
He's an infielder. I feel like if I give you the position, you'd know.
I feel like a penguin.
I'll tell you the position. Third base. You probably are like, he's a D-back. He played for only 2 teams before them.
Well, doesn't Rivera start? Isn't Emmanuel Rivera their starting third baseman?
I'm not sure. Now I'm not sure.
Give him to me.
Evan Longoria.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's not an everyday guy.
Evan?
I don't think so. I think Rivera starts for them, doesn't he?
I'm not sure.
I should ask Omaha
You
Ryan.
could be right.
Yo, I don't know. Listen, that's not my team. I just know they win a lot of games. But Longoria makes sense.
Evan Longoria started at third yesterday. Let's just go back a few games.
I thought Emmanuel Rivera was their guy. I could be off.
You would be correct because he started the game before that.
Rivera.
The game before that, Longoria started at third. I guess they just are swapping, going every other.
That's actually a good trivia question because I think Rivera in my head. I wouldn't have got that. We'd have been here a while. If you'd have said former Ray, I'd have known, though.
Right, and that's kind of the dead giveaway. I did that with a buddy last night. He goes, "Oh, Longoria." I'm like, "Oh, we're talking to Phil Stanton next."
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Here's the 0-1 to Beloso. Hit high and deep to right field. Giving it a look is Scheichhofer, and this baby's gone! Kay Beloso gives the Tigers a 4-3 lead.
Breaking ball to start, and Evans skies this one down the line and left toward the corner. Pearson back at the wall. That ball is gone! It's a grand slam for Evans.
Big game tonight in downtown Omaha. Are you going? Game 3 of the College World Series. It is eat or be eaten. LSU or Florida. Who do you have? We'll talk to Phil Stanton about it now. Phil Stanton, co-founder and editor of College Baseball Insider at Road to Omaha on Twitter. Phil, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, we're
good. We're good.
We're feeling good. We're going to go downtown for the game today. And, it all comes down to this. It started with extra innings, middled with LSU losing by 100, and now Omaha gets an absolute thriller to decide it all. My question for you is this. Will this game and its implications supersede LSU Wake Forest elimination game without already knowing the result, or do you think it'll at least match what we got to see last week?
I think it will at least match it. A lot of the times you'll hear, like in the NFL playoffs, teams will say there's more pressure on them in the AFC or NFC championship game trying to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously all the teams want to win it, but there's so much pressure in trying to get there. So I think LSU and Wake, they were just, both of them, so intent on trying to get to that championship series. And everybody had a pretty good idea that it was going to be louder against Skeens for that game, which was just a dream matchup for college baseball fans. So I think as we get closer and as we get into the early part of the game, I think there'll be that pressure again. But hopefully it'll be able to match that Thursday game with Wake and LSU.
If Jay Johnson was going to give his pep talk, would he be talking to his defense up the middle or his pitching staff to have success tonight?
I think that they probably would need to go hand in hand. It's going to be
difficult. That's strange, right? Like, now we got to find a way that we can pick it to keep us in this deal.
Yeah, and you would hope, a lot of times things just kind of snowballed for them yesterday. You get that first error, that first miscue, that gets into your head. Then you have a chance of other ones happening. I think if they're able to be clean like the first inning or two, then I think they'll be in pretty good shape. But as strong an offense as Florida has, you're not going to be able to strike everybody out. So that they're going to be putting balls in play. You want your guys to be able to handle those.
Phil, I think the question everyone's asking is it Skeens or is it no Skeens? Because he's coming off 120 pitches, just 3 days rest. What are you thinking about it if you're Coach Johnson in this scenario?
I think that they're, going to talk to Skeens today. I would be very surprised if he would start. I'm
with you.
Yeah, my guess would be that they would go with either Hurd or Herring to start. Both of them have had success in Omaha during the World Series.
And Hurd's a former starter.
Yes. I think the max that you could get out of Skeens would be 2 innings. Maybe you get 1, depending on how many pitches he would throw. But I'm guessing that today would be a day where he would do some bullpen work, but he's not going to get extended. So I just can't see him starting the game where they're trying to look for 3 or 4 innings out of him. My thought would be that ideally they would love to see Hurd, Herring, Cooper handle the game. If their offense is able to get to Caglione early and they could build up a lead, I think they would be very comfortable going with those 3. I think if there's a point where they feel like they need a little spark, they may need just something to kind of gap those innings. Maybe you see Skeen for an inning, but I would think 2 max. I'd be really shocked if he would start.
Listen, I know Sully has made a living kind of with his persona, and he seems a little terse and kind of he's intense, right? And Caglione goes, he was effectively wild the last time he took the bump. But if I was going to give an advantage emotionally, it seems like kind of Jay Johnson and his demeanor with his team, kind of the free-flowing, fun-loving. I've got the natural fan base behind me. Omaha has embraced LSU. It seems to me I would give the advantage to LSU psychologically. How much should I reconsider with what has to happen physically for both teams to pull this off?
Well, I think when you stop and think about LSU's path, they've been on they've had elimination games ever since they lost that 3-2 game to Wake Forest a week ago Monday. So they've had their backs against the wall pretty much for a full week, and I think they have embraced that. They've had that mentality of one game at a time. And I think they'll be, as you were saying, as loose as they have been. I think that they're easily going to be able to put yesterday's game behind them. I think they'll feel like, okay, now we're in another elimination game. We've had a few of these already. I think they're going to be really comfortable going in. I think there'll probably be more pressure on Florida because of the offensive explosion that they did have yesterday. But I think LSU will still be loose, and Jay Johnson will be a big part of that. I think he'll have the guys comfortable coming out of the gate. I think, we should expect to see them pretty loose out on the field through pregame. Obviously things will tighten up a little bit as the game gets going, but I think they will be loose, early in the game.
Phil, would you expect a low-scoring affair today after what happened yesterday, like more of a walk-off home run situation?
I think it's going to be tighter. I think a big factor will be what the wind does today.
Yep.
If the wind's blowing out again, I could see a 9-8, an 8-7, something like that. I think LSU is going to swing the bats better today than they did yesterday. And the game could have been a lot different yesterday. They left 8 guys on over those first 3 innings.
Mm-hmm.
So
and 13 for the game. That's a big number.
Yes, it is. And so if they end up, Evans's grand slam was almost like an excuse me grand slam, because I think a lot of people, really thought that it was going to go foul, and then it ends up going out, and everybody gets all excited and all. If LSU had one of those fly balls, if they had been able to get a fly ball up there in the first or second, and they get a grand slam, maybe things end up turning yesterday. So I think it's still going to be a really close game, but I do think if the wind's blowing out, I think it'll be a higher scoring game where we might see 8-7, 9-8, something like that.
So we've talked a lot about pitching and the way that the wind is blowing. How about the ability to make the routine? Yeah, we saw Caglione. I referenced it earlier. He was effectively wild. They played good D behind him. They picked it relatively well. Is defense an issue when you look at how you want to kind of cap this game tonight?
It potentially could be. I think LSU has been pretty solid through the year. I think the errors get magnified, when you're on this stage, when you're in the World Series. But I think Jay Johnson will have all of them, pretty well settled down. And I would expect both teams to be on their A game defensively.
Phil, as you look at the starting pitching for Florida, you had your top two starters not go very deep, but then the long relief pitching really stepped up for their bullpen. Is that going to stay consistent, though, in this game? Is Caglione going to get pulled before the fourth, fifth inning? And I guess if so, do they have enough arms in the bullpen to keep doing what they're doing?
I think they still could. I think Neely could be a big factor. I think they could extend him a little bit if they needed to, that he could potentially go, 2 or 3 innings versus just a traditional 1 inning cut. So I could see them. I'm sure they're going to have a plan where if Caglione is really struggling early, that if they have to pull him in the third or the fourth, that they'll have somebody in mind to go in there for him.
It's been an electric environment, and attendance records are in big trouble, and obviously LSU has a ton to do with that. Were you okay with we were due for a 24, not 24-4, but we were due for a dud, given kind of this thing living up to all the expectations of the great players that were involved from day one in the CWS, correct?
Yeah, I am just surprised that it came in the championship series. I thought we might have had one of those, like in one of the elimination games, maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday. But before yesterday, the widest margin, I think, was 5 runs. So we were really fortunate to have had so many close games up to that point. So hopefully that was the anomaly for the World Series, and we have a good close one tonight.
Phil, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much, and enjoy this game tonight.
I will, and you guys enjoy as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, and thank all of you for listening to today's show. If you missed anything, go back on the pod. Again, type in Hail Varsity Radio, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon. You can catch anything.
I'm taking LSU.
I'm taking Omaha, too.
No, Omaha. Go double J and J Johnson.
Yeah.
LSU in a tight one.
We'll see you tomorrow.